Hello and welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast, Series 3. Last year, we spoke to SDRs, BDRs, and people earlier on in their sales careers about their journeys, tips, and why people should get into the industry. This year, we'll be speaking with sales and business leaders about their journeys, how they've made their success, and their insights into sales as an industry, especially what needs to be done to change the perception of sales. I'm Lizzie.
And I'm Kyle, and still for far too long, people have just been falling into sales. But through this podcast and conversations with industry leaders, we're looking to continue to change the perception of sales and make it a career of choice.
To kick the series off, today we'll be speaking with Ben Audley, CRO of legal tech company Summize, one of the fastest growing businesses in the Northwest. Initially starting his career in cybersecurity sales, Ben progressed from having no experience to a VP of sales, moved his life over to Boston, and was instrumental in helping the business secure private equity investment, and then later on down the line in the sale of the business. We'll be speaking to him about his journey and decision earlier on in his career to hide his sexuality, as well as his perception of the sales industry. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to this episode of the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. And today, delighted to be joined by Ben Audley. Ben, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. And just to kind of kick things off, please introduce yourself, Ben. Tell us a bit about you and where you currently work.
Yeah, no worries. So currently I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, CRO, at a company called Summize, based in Manchester City Centre. We're a legal tech provider, so basically a piece of technology that's trying to change the way that people interact with contracts, really selling across all industries and in different countries. So very exciting, fast-paced, I'd say scale-up stage tech company.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the introduction. And on this series of the podcast, we're focusing the conversation more so on kind of senior sales leaders within the kind of tech industry. So it'd be good to kick things off, I guess, at the beginning, really. And if you wouldn't mind just telling us how and why you got into sales in the first place all those years ago.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, because a lot of people end up just sort of falling into it, don't they? Sort of, how did you get into it? Yeah. It's an interesting one. I think it probably is less obvious than if you said I was going to be a doctor or even sort of a hairdresser or something like that, where, you know, I want to do this, so I go and train and do this, and then you come out and there's a very obvious job. I think I always wanted to be sort of in commercial side of things. I kind of enjoyed selling. I'd set up a couple of little businesses at school. I really wanted a brand new car, and my parents don't have a lot of money, and I really didn't want a clapped out banger like a lot of my friends. So I went off, set up something and worked out, oh, hold on a minute, you can get money and you can swap it for things that you like. Kind of put those two things together. Did things like young enterprise at school as well, which I'm still part of now on a sort of a volunteer board member for Greater Manchester. So joining all those dots. I went off to university, chose to do a marketing degree, which has a lot of components into that, sort of business strategy and things like that. And I actually worked out I didn't necessarily want to be a marketeer. I'm not sure I'm creative enough actually to do sort of ad campaigns and things like that, but I really enjoyed the business strategy, the influence, the psychology side of things, the creating something from nothing. So I went off, did my first job in recruitment actually. So talking to people in recruitment. I worked out that people are very frustrating, as you'll probably be able to agree with. And I worked out the bits I didn't like about recruitment, did like about sales, and I think everyone's different. So I think it's about matching kind of your personality to your skill set. And I ended up leaving then and kind of had some advice around joining a startup tech company, and that's where really my sales career, I'd say, and going into tech and startup and scale up businesses really took off.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. And we'll probably come on to the young enterprise stuff a little bit later, actually, because really interested in your involvement in that and what we can do to get more young people into sales and business. But you mentioned you had a couple of businesses at school then, where it all started. What were the businesses you had at school?
Yeah, well, we actually, I started one of them in Young Enterprise, and then I went on and carried on running it after, to be honest. So this is showing my age, but this is kind of before the internet wasn't as big used as it is. Yeah, I'm not sure Facebook even existed. Never mind social media. It was before, for anyone listening to this, before dating apps or anything like that came about. And we set up it was an eating out guide. We sold advertising space too, actually, and we put it out in the local paper, sold the advertising space, did like vouchers so people could check the ROI back on restaurants, and it was these things are online now, so you probably see them all the time, so Manchester's Finest and other businesses like that for around here. It was just a paper version of that, but you could directly work out, correlate, if it costs you this a page, you sell it for this, you could discount it, and that's what kind of got the buzz for that. And I just wanted a new car. It's only a Vauxhall Corsa. It's not like it was a Ferrari, but it was brand new and it was mine and it was paid for. So that was quite exciting.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. And we'll come on to, as I said, the kind of business and the young enterprise stuff. So what's interesting about your story is a lot of people do fall into sales, whereas with you, it seems like because you had that exposure and involvement from an early age, it was actually something you were more aware of and kind of knew the benefits of going into it. So we'll come on to that a little bit later. One thing I'm curious to know, you started in sales, in tech sales, entry level role. It was the account manager position, wasn't it, in cybersecurity? Can you remember your first ever sale or your first ever meeting that you booked in that role?
Yeah, I definitely can. Yeah, and and it's tough, and it hasn't particularly evolved on that. It was whether you call it a BDR now, an SDR, whatever, inside sales, but it was on a desk in a crappy little room, to be honest, in this sort of I'd use the word business part loosely, and I remember it was the CEO of that business. It was very early on, a guy called Paul Kenny, who's kind of been a mentor throughout my career, and we just started sort of different ends of the alphabet and just rang and hoped for the best. I think there wasn't a lot of strategy beyond there. Looking back at it now, I can't believe I actually went to work each day and did that, and it turned into a very successful business, and from there. But we actually started with councils. So I think it was Bradford City Council.
Wow.
To be honest, at the time, and my aim was to book a meeting, and we went on to sell them the software at the time. So, and then the business grew very quickly. I can remember the first proper big company. I got a meeting. It was HSBC. I think I pestered this guy. I won't say his name because I still remember it now. But pestered this guy for months and months, and I think he just gave in the end. I was just like, I'll just have this meeting with Ben. But they went on to buy 330,000 copies of the software. So it worked.
Wow. Impressive. So I guess for anyone listening to this in sales, persistence is absolutely, absolutely key, particularly if you want to bring on a business as big as HSBC. And I think I love the Bradford City Council being the first one you booked the meeting with, because nowadays there's all this tech, cadences, strategies, and actually the first meeting booked was simply starting at one end of the alphabet, someone else starting at the other, and that's how it kind of all started.
It didn't have any data. So, you can get public sector data, so you can get a list of all councils online, and you start that. We divided up the business into two, actually, and we had A to K, I can remember, and I think I started at K and Paul I started at A and Paul started at K, and we met in the middle.
Brilliant. Love it.
I'd say quality. I got further than him. I'll send this to him. I got a lot further than him down the list.
Good stuff. And on kind of progressing from that role then, really impressive career trajectory. It was from account manager to VP of sales, I want to say in 6-7 years, was it, I think?
Yeah, so I'd say my first senior job was VP of sales, and that was out in the US. So we'd expanded very quickly from a startup to sort of a proper, quite large international tech company, and we needed someone to go and really grow the US side of the business. And I moved to Boston, having only been to the US once, possibly twice. Which again, insane at the time. Literally, sold everything. I was renting an apartment. Literally, put all my stuff in like one of those storage things, sort of Ready Steady Store, I think it was, or something like that, and literally moved. And I took my other half partner as well, who had never actually even been to the US. Went home one day and said, "I've got some interesting news. We're moving to America in a few weeks." But kind of embraced it. Took these chances. I was in a fortunate position that able to. Didn't have any children. Was renting an apartment. It was even though I did completely upheaved my life. It was actually very straightforward, and it was a great decision and a really interesting journey. But it grew that business, that side of the business, to about 8 million revenue business, part of a team that did a private equity deal at the time, which was $50 million, and then came back to take over the EMEA side of the business with a plan to sell the company. We're kind of 2 or 3 years after I came back and did the EMEA journey, which we did sell the business for considerable amount of money to a competitor in 2018.
Yeah, very nice. And interested to come on to the private equity funding and the sales shortly as well, because I think that's a journey a lot of, I guess, people starting out in sales would aspire to go on, really. But on the US then, making the move to Boston, what was that like in itself?
Daunting, literally arriving with sort of a couple of suitcases, renting a car. I remember at Boston Airport, arrived at night, arrived at this apartment, hadn't thought about, it was furnished, but hadn't thought about like bed sheets and like a cup. And like just it completely with all the move. I know we got furnished and going, oh no, we need to go out. Literally driving and finding a shopping centre like a Macy's or something, I think it was, and it was like, God, I think we're going to need an iron, we're going to need a cup, can't have a drink, hold on a minute, what about a towel? And hadn't bought any of this, and I just packed completely the things that I didn't need. I'd thought about like what sunglasses I was taking and outfits and these types of things, and completely not any remote things. So yeah, I had my dinner that night in a Burger King. So I can't say it was a super glamorous start, but an incredible journey. I sort of say, yeah, never trust what you see on people on Instagram. So you'd see sort of me swanning off to New York and doing all these glamorous things and moving to America. And the reality was I didn't have a glass to have a drink out of, and I was in Burger King.
Yeah, very, very glamorous indeed. And what are some of the differences or nuances in, I guess, building a sales organization in the US versus the UK itself?
I actually think people buy in a very similar way. There's some cultural differences that, their sport's different. If you're building rapport with people, your experiences growing up are going to be very different. Americans love to think everyone lives in London. You have to explain that Manchester is a different place. But the actual the buying side of it is actually very simple. People go through a buying journey, and you educate them, and they might look at competitors, and they test something, and they procure it. I think they're more honest actually than British people during the journey. So at that point, it's actually a bit easier to read people. But apart from that, no, I think it was a harder to I'd say to move there. It was more of a cultural difference moving there than it actually was to sell per se. So it's things like, you don't have a national security number. How'd you get a mobile phone? You don't have any credit, so no one will give you it. You can't get anything. I remember not being able to get a mobile phone. So yeah, it's those types of things which are harder. The actual job, I think, is actually very similar. I think the more challenges is merging the UK and the US side of the business, which was the job to make sure it has its own identity, but it's one culture. And it's one business, and the good things you share and the bad things you also share, so you don't do them. That's more of the challenge. That's a communication issue. Yeah.
Cool. Brilliant. And on the kind of career trajectory then, so from entry level to VP of sales, now CRO as well, that's kind of a career progression path that a lot of people would want to go on. Probably would be fair to say not everyone goes on that exact same journey. So what do you think stood out for you, or what advice would you give to anyone that kind of wants to replicate the path that you've had?
Yeah, I think there is an importance in finding the right vehicle to take someone on that. I think people miss that sometimes. They focus, rightly so, on how hardworking am I? I'm going to do the hours. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And this is actually not just in sales. It's across jobs. But you need to work out that is the place that you're putting that effort and time in, will that actually deliver your goals? And if they don't, then you're in the wrong place, and you're actually doing them. You're doing it incorrectly. I did join one organization at the start of my career, and I tell this story quite a bit. I'm quite into cars, and I was looking. Bear in mind, I had a Vauxhall Corsa at the time. I was looking at this new Bentley that had come out, and someone walked past me and said, "You'll never get that working here." And one of probably the best career advice I've ever had, even though they probably can't remember ever saying it to me, because it was a light bulb moment of literally matching these two things up. If I never get kind of like that. I was like, that's fine. If that's on me, that's fine. And that's not the be all and end all of life. And I'm not saying it is, but to want something and be in an organization, no matter what you do, you'll never get it. That was the light bulb moment for me. So I think that's probably the best advice I can give.
Brilliant. I think it's a mindset thing as well, isn't it? Particularly with that example that you gave there. But what should people be looking for in a vehicle as we described it? But what should people look for in a business to help them, achieve what they want to achieve?
Yeah. Well, I think it is about merging what your skills are and what you enjoy, because I know a lot of people who work in large organizations that are very successful and love those. So I think it depends on your personality type. So I think you do have to go on a bit of a journey. Maybe you have to try a few jobs at the start, to be honest, to find out what you do and what you don't like. What are your goals? What are they? If you're mainly about relationship building and working in huge teams and different functions, maybe a startup isn't right, which is the journey I've gone for. Maybe you've got different skills. So I think it's about matching those. It's a lot easier if you enjoy your job. It's very cliched, but if it's a job that literally every day you get up and you think, I'm dreading going to work, that probably isn't the one you're going to be successful in. And can the company offer you what you want if you do all those things of being the best and trying and things like that? I'm not trying to dumb those things down. They are important, but there's no point doing something. There's no point saying, I want to earn £100,000 a year or £1 million a year, whatever those goals are, if the most successful person in your business earns 50. It's just you're not going to get there. You're unlikely to be that special.
Yeah. And I guess it's about asking the right questions as well when you're kind of in the process of looking at these companies or vehicles.
Yeah.
So really, really sage advice. And just want to touch on what you mentioned before with the private equity funding, the sale of the business. I know you've gone through the funding round since then as well at kind of current companies and since the first place. But what was that like initially? Because being in sales for 4 or 5 years and all of a sudden you're exposed to $50 million kind of investment rounds and, we're talking really big, serious stuff here. What was that like? And how do you think that's helped your career being, having that exposure?
Very daunting. It still is. Even though you've done them before and you know what to expect, you're kind of being assessed. The best way to describe it, I think you don't even teach it, it's a bit like Ofsted coming in, to be honest, and you are being grilled. And these people don't give their money lightly. They're often very highly intelligent, whether they're lawyers or accountants, very metric driven people, and you are grilled. And they'll say they're assessing the business, but they are assessing you as well, and whether they think that you are capable of doing that job. If they give you the money, effectively what they're doing is giving money. Do they believe in the plan? Do they believe that you can achieve it with either the products you've got, the market you've got, but also the team that you've got in place? So the first time I think I felt sick, very, very dry mouth. And I wasn't actually expecting to go into the meeting. I can remember exactly. So I literally probably wanted to throw up. But that went well. I think I learned a lot. I think all of these is about learning from experiences, taking things from other people. They bring in loads of good ideas. They work with very fast-paced companies. So you take the ideas, you bring them out. A lot of the things that I do now in terms of scaling up sales teams, some of them are my ideas. Lots of them are from other people, whether it's other businesses or other individuals, and you take them together, and that's how you become successful. There's a reason why you earn more at the later stages in your career at the start. It's because you've got experience and you know what to do and what not to do because you've either done it or someone's told you. So
yeah, brilliant. No, really, really good stuff. And from your career then, you've kind of gone full circle from at the very beginning, being led, being managed, probably having people that you looked up to as kind of inspiration or people you aspire to be, and to now, I guess, people looking up to you and leading a team, several teams of salespeople. So what do you think are the key things that make a really top sales leader from your experiences?
That's a good question. You probably ask my team what they do don't like about me. I'll probably be, actually don't do that. We never know where that'll go. I think having done it is really important. I always use that line. I never ask someone to do something that I haven't done before. It's really good that even when getting grads and you're talking about even sort of a call script or writing an email or doing something like that, you've done it. I've made thousands of calls. So I think you have a level of authenticity from that. So I think that is quite important. It's not, it's not just, do as I say. You've done it before. So I think making sure that you respect other people's personalities, picking a diverse team, different skills, people have come from different backgrounds, and I've always tried to make sure that the best teams have always been very diverse, because people have got different experiences. I think that's key. And ultimately, you just want people. I hope that what I give my team is something that they sort of, if they want to aspire to have some of the things that I've done or the journey that I have, that I'm offering them the ability or opportunity to do that, and I can show them a clear path to do that. So I've worked with some really talented people, and it's been really exciting to take these people from university to see them buy their first house or get married or achieve some of these goals that they want to. And I'm lucky to still work with some of these people to this day, which is great.
Great, fantastic. And I appreciate you going through all about your journey. It sounds like it's been quite the one. And I suppose now that going through your journey, we'd be really intrigued to find out a little bit more about, I suppose, the perception of the industry, because that's all about what this podcast is about. So I suppose, one really broad question to ask would be, what was your perception of the sales industry before you joined? And that's literally straight out of university. What was your perception of sales?
Probably quite negative. I still think it's one of those jobs that I don't know why. Probably need to get over it now as a CRO. But that people have what I call, I'm going to use proper jobs, and this is either, maybe because people fall into it, or maybe because people don't see it as a profession. I actually do see it, it's a complete, you learn, you go through stages, you read books, you develop yourself. It's a lot about psychology, and it's not just about getting people to buy things. It's about understanding people and designing, buying journeys, and even career plans as you build out management teams and things like that. So that's my perception now, but I still think underneath that there is that perception. It's what I had initially. I tell the story. I was at a barbecue recently, and I was stood in front of a surgeon and a pilot. They said, "What do you do?" And I always go, "Tech." "Oh, you're a developer?" "No, I sell it." "Well, I don't actually sell it, do I? I manage a team of people that sell it. I'm a salesman. I'm an IT salesman. That's what I am." And I don't know why. I should really definitely get over that, but I understand why people think it. And I think I should probably take the responsibility as a lot of other people in my position and do it, to go, no, I do sales. This is what I wanted to do. Dedicated my career to that. And it's been very successful as well. And it is no different than being a pilot or being a doctor. It's a different route, it's a different skill set. And, everyone has a part to play.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you say, actually, because I remember you telling us that barbecue story, and the fact that you've, as you said there, you've done so successfully in the industry, you've progressed incredibly far to where you're at now. Where do you think this perception's come from initially, actually?
I'm not too sure. I think sales is very broad, and if you're a pilot, you're generally a pilot. Whereas if you're sales, and I'm not trying to criticize different people, it's the used car salesman thing, and I'm not criticizing used car salesmen, but it's that kind of, there's a difference. It's people who sell things. I've sold things for millions in pounds in the past to some of the largest companies in the world, and but you could also sell a t-shirt on a market stall. And there's people who have made great businesses. I think the Boohoo family started as market traders and become billionaires. So it's criticism. It's great success stories. But I think people don't necessarily see it as a profession. More something like, oh, you've got, I don't know, good charisma or the gift of the gab, and you can sell it. It's the Del Boy thing. That's probably a good analogy. That's what I think people think I am when I tell them I'm a salesperson, sort of unloading things out the back of a car, trying to sell dodgy gear, where actually I was probably on the phone to Deloitte or HSBC trying to sell something that completely changes the way they work. That's the actual reality of what we do. But the perception is probably that the Del Boy only falls on horses. For the people who are listening that aren't that old, probably won't get that reference, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a huge part why we started this podcast, because that there is that perception of sales, and when you actually speak to people in the industry and the skill sets that they've got, it's nothing like it, really. And I suppose then, actually, where were you first introduced to sales, and what kind of attracted you to the industry?
I think I was very money motivated. It's a bit of a cliche, and I think some cultures, some roles they not willing to talk about that, or it's a bit of don't mention it. I think exactly is if you're going into a commission-based role, you have to be money motivated. You have to want to see a direct correlation between the amount of money that you learn and the work that you put in. And as shallow as it is, I really wanted nice things, nice cars, nice watches, nice holidays. Come from being a student, I was sick of being poor. In short, and I wanted all these things, and this for me was a way of matching what skills I had with some of the goals that I had, and the correlation is why I got into it. It would be very nice to say I was good at football, so that would have been a great route, but I'm not. I'm completely tone deaf, so I couldn't be a singer. You're not good at this. My maths is fine, but I was never going to be an economist. So I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fear of living off pot noodles for the rest of your life is a big motivator for getting into sales in the first place.
Had a lot of microchips and things like that. Yeah, used to just have omelets all the time, so I could just afford eggs and it would make a meal. Yeah, sick of that.
Yeah,
Great
exactly.
omelets though. Great omelets. I always say people like, what's your dream job? I'm like an omelet chef. I'm awesome at them.
I bet you perfected it at uni as
That's
well.
it. They just
All
don't
the
earn enough
practice
money.
making them.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I suppose then, well, since being in the industry, what's your perception of the industry now?
I still think it's that's quite similar, to be honest. I don't necessarily think it's come. I still think that's the case. I think it's you're in sales and you don't want to say it. I think maybe more and more. I think tech is helping. Sort of the tech companies and even sort of the Googles of the world have made it a bit cooler. And I think the startup stories and things like that people see have definitely transformed that element of it. So I think it's exciting to talk about. I'm in a scale up or I'm in a startup and we're doing this. The sales element, I still think it has the same perception as it did previously.
That's interesting that you say that, actually. And what do you think needs to be done to perhaps change the perception of the industry? I know you obviously mentioned being quite heavily involved in young enterprise and everything that you're doing there. But I suppose, yeah, from your perspective, what needs to be done to change the perspective?
I think it's probably all on the individuals. As I said, I think when asked the question, you deliver the answer, and you don't think, "Oh, I'm ashamed," would be a really strong word, but I'm not trying to get around it or answer it. You answer it with the same conviction. You're proud of doing it. You like doing it. You've made a successful life and career out of it. You start saying it and delivering it, and I think people will change.
Yeah, sure. So it's like a big being confident about what you do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Stop saying I work in tech and just I'm a salesperson, because sick of explaining to people that I'm not a developer and I couldn't code to save my life.
Great. So if we were at a barbecue right now, then Ben, and I asked you, okay, Ben, I work in recruitment. What do you do? How would you respond?
What should I say? A tech sales leader or a tech sales manager or something like that? Manage a commercial team for a tech organization. That'd be a better answer, because that is actually what I do.
There you go. Mic drop after that one there. But
There you go.
perfect.
I'll work on that. That I didn't. Yeah, I'll have a think about that. That was off the cuff.
Great. We'll ask you at the end of the podcast what were your responses. Perfect. So it's all I suppose people in the industry's response then. I suppose being proud of what they do, and I think I massively agree. I think people do need to be proud. It's almost an art form, sales, and exactly how you perform it. So yeah, I think it's a massive thing that people should be proud of doing. But no, I appreciate you giving your insights in terms of the perception of the industry now. I suppose another thing that we do want to touch on then is actually something that's come across that we've come across on your LinkedIn, and I know recently with it being Pride Month a few months ago, you did a LinkedIn post about sort of sexuality and maybe making the decision to perhaps keep that a little bit more to yourself in I suppose the outset of your career. And I'd just love to learn a little bit more about the post that you did and your situation there.
Yeah, no worries. That's the first time I've ever did that, actually. And I was inspired by a friend who was a lawyer, actually, who wrote one. I was like, maybe I should do. Maybe there's someone. It's not about self-promotion. Maybe there's someone that will read it that might resonate with, and then maybe I have the opportunity to actually change that. So I thought maybe that was quite important. Yeah, as a gay man going in sales, I thought. Well, I do think it is. It's very male dominated, very straight male dominated, and I genuinely believe that it would impact my career to have that out in the open. People like to build rapport with people who are like them. if you walk into a bar and you're in a football shirt and someone at the bar has the same team on, you would be friends. I guarantee you'd probably have a drink with them. You're looking for commonalities, and that's how humans make friends. And this is quite a barrier. I think the UK in particular has changed a lot since, I see the people coming through now, but definitely, I grew up at a time where you weren't even allowed to talk about homosexuality at school. There was no mention of it. It was illegal, and therefore it does change your perception of how you're going to come across. And I absolutely thought it was super male dominated. Your boss, straight males, they'll not, if they're inviting someone to a football match or inviting someone for a drink after work, you won't go. That's how you get promoted. And from a customer point of view, people buy from people buy from people they like, people buy from people that they build rapport with, and therefore you might actually be less successful. Or is it better to lie and make up this persona? And it was a strange one. What I would say is I've actually been very pleasantly surprised, and I come out as an extreme word. I had a boyfriend and we're now engaged, so it's not. I wouldn't say it was a coming out story, but I told him, and it absolutely fine, and it didn't impact it at all. And I'm very lucky throughout my career. Summize now, it's absolutely just a complete non-event, which is exactly what I want. You can judge me for anything you want. Probably lots of things I do. You can really dislike me probably for lots of things that I am or might believe, but that shouldn't be it. So yeah, my advice would be to just be who you are, be yourself. And then actually what I would tell myself now is, if it had been a problem, which it actually wasn't, you'd probably be surprised that it wasn't, would you want to work there? As in, I don't think you would. I don't think that would be a great company. When talk about circling back to the start, finding the right vehicle, if you genuinely can't be who you want to be, I'm not too sure that'd be the right place. But I don't actually see it changing in terms of the people coming through the industry, though. If I think about people that I work with or worked with, gay people, I see them in other departments, marketing, finance, HR, from sales. I think I've worked with one gay person in my whole career in sales. In the same way we often talk about how do we get more women in tech and how do we get more women in sales. I think from a diversity point of view, from sexuality, I don't think it is, and I don't know why. I don't know how to look at why are people being put off. Why maybe people are thinking exactly what I thought, and maybe that is stopping people from getting into it. But I would say absolutely don't. If you want to be a salesperson, I wouldn't let it bother you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, really appreciate the advice there, because I think it's a massive thing that's personal to me as well. I think it's hard enough to sort of come out to yourself and be comfortable with yourself as it is, then to obviously think about the environment that you're joining, especially when perhaps there is that fear, perhaps there is that stereotype or anything that might be attached to it in terms of what you're going for. I mean, actually on that then, because as you said at the end there, you think I suppose a big bit of advice for you to be people to be themselves, and 100% it needs to be the right vehicle. Do you think there is, and this kind of leads with the on from the perception of sales point, do you think there is a stereotype of someone that should work in sales and should be in that industry?
Yeah, I think there's probably stereotypes in most jobs. You could go, what stereotype does a hairdresser look like? What does a doctor look like? What does the thing? People could probably draw them, which is wrong. But I think it is I think it's probably straight white male in the UK, to be honest. Yeah, exactly. So I think that is what it is. And what can we do? What can we do about that? I said, just be, if you want to do something, go after it, and do it. But that's to say, I'd say the traditional route. But the fact that I haven't worked with anyone, I don't interviewing. I can't, you can't tell. You don't ask, obviously, the question. But in terms of work with someone, I've worked with one gay, definitely male throughout my whole career. That's it.
Sure. And I suppose then that's a lot from the I suppose the salesperson's point of view. From a business point of view, then what do you think businesses, especially sales teams and in the industry, what do you think businesses should be doing to ensure that they're being diverse, being inclusive, and encouraging people of any kind of background and any sexuality to be joining?
Well, I think it's important just to make it a part of the culture. So at Summize, we have a diversity and inclusion team already in place. At the start, that's run by someone, and it covers everything. Talk about female rights, race. We have people come in and talk. With it being Manchester Pride, we had someone who was trans going through a journey come in and talk to us last week, actually. So I think it's just about, I think the businesses do have a responsibility to just make it normal, make it just part of the culture, that you can say, you can talk about it, you can be open. And I think if you promote that, I think people might be more likely to join an interview. There's sometimes criticism of businesses. Is it called pinkwashing or something like that? Where they put up a pride flag for Pride Month, or they go on a parade and then they do it and take it down. And I actually think that's sometimes actually a little bit harsh. I think, if there is a business at a Pride March or doing something, or you can see it on their social medias, you at least know, there's a journey. And I'm not saying that's done and it should stop there. But for me, that wasn't the case growing up. I didn't see that. You see big companies doing it, but I think there's probably a responsibility for smaller companies to get involved and do that as well. And I think we're doing a good job here at Summize. And linking it to business, from my point of view. People buy from people, and people come from all different walks of life. You were probably not that different or from the people that you're selling to. Maybe you are actually selling to someone that has gay children, or maybe someone has experienced that, or maybe they have friends or other colleagues. I talk about homosexuality because I don't talk about race, many things. I can't give the background on their perception of it, but I think just talk about it and be open. You don't know. And I think that's important. And I think there's a lot of business benefits to doing it. Having a different, diverse board, having a different, diverse sales team, a marketing team is really useful, because everyone's had different experiences and come from different walks of life. And I think that helps sell things.
Perfect. All right, brilliant. So merging it into the culture and being really well
Make it
aware
normal.
of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really important. And I suppose just to round off then this part, really, just to kind of echo actually what you said previously about giving advice to people. So I suppose just to round all of that off, what advice can you give to someone who may feel, I suppose, scared or apprehensive about joining an environment where they feel like they might have to hide themselves?
I think maybe speak to someone. If you reach out, if you can find someone, whether it's on LinkedIn or someone that maybe has gone through it. As I said, I'm in my mid-30s and I didn't do that post on LinkedIn until I saw one of my friends do it, who works for a top law firm. So, even I needed that, and I'm totally fine. I'm engaged and I've been with my partner for 14 years and it's not hidden at all. But even then, it was kind of putting it out there. And I think it is difficult. I still have to go to countries where being gay is illegal. I've been on business trips to Saudi Arabia where it's illegal to be gay. And I think so there is some of that still does exist. And I'm not trying to make out that it isn't, but I think be true to yourself, seek out some advice. If you have a HR department, reach out, speak to someone, maybe have go out for a drink with your boss or another colleague and talk to them. And then just probably be true to yourself. It'll probably beat yourself up more. I can't believe that you can be as successful as you can if you're hiding something. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be the forefront. I always say, and this is just me personally, I don't want it to even be a thing. I want there's so much more, or that you'd better to know about me before my sexuality. It's just a thing. But you are going to come in and say, what did you do at the weekend? Are you going on holiday? Where did you spend it with? If you're constantly hiding something or even deleting a part of that narrative, you are not going to be yourself. I find it very hard to believe that you'd be very successful.
Brilliant, really good and very important conversation as well. And just one more thing on that I'd like to touch on. You mentioned about the stereotypical salesperson. We've spoken about what businesses can do, advice for individuals themselves. But what can straight white males be doing to kind of help with this situation as well?
Is this for your own advice?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I need to be educated too.
I don't know. Don't make it a thing. Don't just carry on as normal. The majority of my friends are straight. It's just not a thing. Who someone sleeps with or who someone chooses to live with, it's not a thing. We've got a goal at work to achieve these goals, and it's their business goals, and link them to your personal goals. And sexuality does not come into my workplace goals or my personal goals. Might be just travel to this destination, or to buy this object, or to get married. Who that's to is just not an issue. So don't make it a thing. I think call out something if you do see something not. I think that's quite important. I don't think, if you do see something or people make some banter or something like that, I wouldn't say you need to be careful with that in sales organizations, that you don't create culture that no one feels that they can ever say anything. But if you see something or you think someone might be affected by something, take them to the side, have a chat with them, take them for a coffee. Is probably things. I think it is easier to ignore things, crack on. But I think that's one thing that everyone probably do with loads. It's not just about being gay. It's probably doing about, it could be about someone you think might be struggling with their mental health or going through this, or, just trying to be aware of other people and not burying your head in the sand.
Yeah. Brilliant, great advice. And just kind of coming to the end of the conversation now, before we come on to a couple of kind of questions at the end, I just want to ask, not to be all doom and gloom here, but it very much, well, we are in a cost of living crisis. It looks like very much on the way to a recession as well. So what advice, given that you probably worked through a lot of economic downturns as well, would you be giving to sales leaders and salespeople in general to kind of get through it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was actually asked that earlier today by a private equity company. So I'll repeat the answer. This is good. It says we're doing it. I don't think I've ever worked through the good times. I'm not sure when these good times were, but I don't think I've been alive, or I certainly wasn't. I felt like I was born in the late 80s, and there was like horrendous sort of crisis there. Then, I'm trying to think, kind of the September the 11th, load of things like that happened in the early 2000s. Then there was the financial crash in 2008. So I started my career in financial banking recruitment on the same week that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and all the Icelandic banks. That was good week. So I don't think I've ever lived through good times. I think personally my electricity bill is outrageous at the moment, but I think the only advice I can give is carry on. I think sometimes you beat yourself up. These things are going to there's always something that the news is never positive. I've never seen a positive news story in my life. Carry on. You can, if you were starting your career, you could probably back to picking the right vehicle again. You can probably pick something which is more likely to weather the storm than others. So I've always worked in tech companies that can sell into every industry. It's something that's quite important to me. So now it's contracts. So it's what are contracts important to those businesses? Well, every business has managing contracts and being more efficient in the way that you manage them and interact with them is crucial. So that for me is fine. So if something has a downturn, COVID was probably a prime example of that. If you were selling into the airline industry or the hospitality industry, that there is no way of getting out of that. Whereas I could have pivoted and you go, right, okay, some of these, even retail, some of the budget retailers were having a great time, and then some of the others were not. So during COVID, I was able to, sell to some of that household sort of budget retailers where other people were struggling. So I think that's something that you can directly do as a salesperson.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. Coming back to the whole vehicle conversation as well, but a lot of people are, basic salary, all these things are important, of course, but actually focusing more on the product, who you can sell to, are probably things that maybe get overlooked a little bit sometimes as well. So I think that's some really, really good point.
Well, they're out of your control if not, so,
Yeah.
you use stuff that, COVID is a prime example of something can completely come out of nowhere. You cannot predict it. And it completely, if you owned a bar, that's it. There is nothing those people that could do. Whereas if you're doing something that you can sell to everyone, or you can switch it or pivot or do something, then you've got a lot more opportunity to survive that wave.
Yeah, brilliant. But just a couple more things, Ben, before we wrap up. What is the one book or podcast or literature that you would recommend any salesperson kind of read or listen to, or the one that's had the biggest impact on your career?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two, which I know is not you always do that. It's better than a politician not answering it. I'm going to give you double. So there's two. One's called Moments of Truth, which is really old, and it doesn't really come up in that many sales books. But there's a guy who took over an airline, and I run all businesses and a little bit personal life through this. And basically, it's taking a journey that a customer might go through and literally dissecting it into individual pieces, and then working out, and you fix that and you fix that. So, if you imagine a restaurant, you go, right, what's the experience like when they enter? Does someone take a coat? How quickly do they get a menu? How quickly would someone come back and take a drink? What happens to that? What happens to that? And as opposed to just going, I had a nice meal, you dissect the journey that someone goes through into these individual bits, and then you try and empower people to correct things that they think are wrong. And that's one of my criticisms of big business. People always go, oh, we don't really do it that way. I know it should be done better. And that was something he did. The book's a little bit dry, but the concept is great. And any new business I go in, we kind of build strategies around that. So that one I think is really good about building businesses. The other one is black box thinking, which you may have come across. That's far more interesting read. Different stories relating to different industries and about learning from mistakes, basically encouraging people to not see mistakes as a negative, but see them as something that you can learn from and adapt and change. And I think that's super important in sales or anything. You get something, you do right. It's not just I lost that deal or I did. It's what could you have done about it? What have you learned from it? What would you change in the future? How would you adapt? And I think that's probably about life as well. And I think it's a very interesting book. I find reading quite hard and horrible, to be honest. I know a lot of people do these and say, oh, I read 5 books a day and I bounce out of bed at 4 a.m. and go for a run. I'd love to say I'm that guy. I'm not. Like death, I'm like, don't talk to me before 9 or 10. And I read books often because I feel like I have to, and they're good, but they are very good.
Brilliant. Yeah, we're going to collate all of the recommendations from the series as well and publish, I guess, a bit of a reading list for anyone that is interested. But Ben, look, that brings us to the end of the conversation. Just want to say a massive thank you for joining us. Really enjoyed it. Some great nuggets and advice there for anyone listening, and yeah, really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks very much for your time.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. Please subscribe and follow for more. If you like this content, also please check out This Is Prime on all our social media channels, and also Kyle Gallagher and Lizzie Formasano on LinkedIn. See you next time.